Ever get that feeling like you're walking under a dark cloud? Like something's just not right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Well, today we're going to be diving into the world of curses to see if maybe there's something more to that feeling than just our imaginations.
Yeah, we've got two cases lined up for you that really blur the line between true crime and the possibility of curses.
Buckle up,
Might
everybody.
be a wild ride.
Our first story starts back in the 1720s in a small farming community.
Franklin, Connecticut, to be exact.
And that's where we meet Micah Rood.
Just your average farmer trying to live a quiet life.
But Micah's family history is already kind of messed up.
Yeah, his father, Thomas, was actually the only person in America ever executed for incest.
Whoa!
Yeah, so you gotta wonder, how much did that weigh on Micah?
It's a heavy burden to carry,
Absolutely.
even if he was trying to make a fresh start as a farmer.
Seems like he was doing a pretty good job of it, too, for a while at least.
Yeah, he had a good reputation in the community.
People said he was a decent guy, always willing to lend a hand.
But then everything changed when a traveling salesman disappeared.
Last seen near Micah's farm,
And then they find the salesman's body,
buried under an apple tree.
head smashed open.
All his money gone.
It's a straight-up horror movie.
And they couldn't definitively link Micah to the crime,
So he was a free man.
but with a lot of suspicion hanging over him.
And then things get really weird.
The next spring, that same apple tree where they found the body,
It blossoms.
but instead of the usual white flowers,
This tree was covered in bright red blossoms.
it was something out of a nightmare.
And when it came time for the harvest,
The tree produced these big yellow apples.
but each one had a blood-red stain in the core.
Spooky, right?
Like the tree itself absorbed the violence.
Some people said it was a sign,
Like a curse.
especially with that blood-red apple imagery.
Powerful stuff.
Especially for a community steeped in religious tradition like colonial Connecticut.
Yeah, it makes you think about the forbidden fruit, the Garden of Eden.
It's like that symbolism resonated with everyone on a deep level.
So what happened to Micah after all this? How did he react?
Well, let's just say things went downhill pretty fast.
He became withdrawn.
Depressed.
People living nearby would hear him screaming in the night.
Some folks said he was always a bit off.
Others thought he was haunted by what happened.
Maybe even by the salesman's ghost?
Chilling.
There's even a story about Micah encountering a young boy stealing apples from that red tree.
And Micah basically begged the boy to take the whole crop.
Like he was terrified of the fruit.
So they weren't just apples to him.
They represented something darker.
His guilt, his fear.
Maybe even the curse itself.
So what ultimately happened to Micah and that creepy apple tree?
Well, Micah eventually died, but that tree lived on for centuries.
Centuries.
Yeah, it finally got taken down by a hurricane in 1938.
Wow, so it really outlived him.
And people tried to grow those red apples.
But no one could ever replicate them. It's like the story itself took root right alongside that tree and became part of the town's history.
A story that's still being told today.
Before we move on to our next case,
The Curse of the Omen.
I'm curious what stood out to you most about Micah's story.
Well, for me, it's the way the story blends true crime with folklore.
Yeah, it's like you have this possible unsolved murder.
And then you add the blood-red apple tree, and it becomes something else entirely.
It makes you question what's really possible and what we choose to believe.
It's a story that stays with you long after you've heard it.
That's for sure.
It makes you wonder what other secrets and stories are hidden out there just waiting to be uncovered.
And that's what we're here to do, dive deep and uncover those stories.
So stay tuned, folks, because things are about to get even more interesting.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
About the stories we tell ourselves.
And the power they have.
To shape our reality.
Speaking of stories.
We've got another one for you.
And this time.
We're heading to Hollywood.
Yeah, baby.
Get ready for some glitz and glamour.
And maybe a little bit of darkness, too.
Oh, yeah.
This case is as Hollywood as it gets.
Full of drama, tragedy.
And a whole lot of strange happenings.
That have fueled rumors of a curse for decades.
We're talking about The Making of the Omen.
The 1976 horror classic.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
Creepy kid, right?
Super creepy.
And I definitely remember hearing about the curse surrounding the production.
Just think about lightning strikes and other weird stuff.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of that.
But before we get into all the spooky details...
Can you give us a quick rundown of the film's premise?
Yeah, what's The Omen all about?
Well, it's basically about the Antichrist,
Okay.
but disguised as an innocent child.
Whoa, that's messed up.
Yeah, it gets even weirder.
How so?
This whole idea actually came from an advertising executive.
What?
Yeah, he believed that the Antichrist was out there living among us.
Like a real person?
As a child.
That's a pretty wild theory.
It is,
Yeah.
and His belief was so strong that it sparked the whole concept for the film.
So The Omen is based on a real guy's paranoid delusion.
Kind of. The film takes some creative liberties, of course.
Like what?
Well, they portray the Antichrist as the literal son of Satan.
Okay, so they definitely amped up the horror element.
For sure.
So we've got a movie about the Antichrist.
Inspired by a guy who genuinely believed it was happening.
No wonder people started thinking it was cursed.
Right. It's like they were asking for trouble.
And to make matters worse,
One of the film's creators, Robert Munger,
he publicly claimed that the devil didn't want the movie to be made.
he said the devil was actively trying to sabotage the production.
Seriously? Why would the devil care about a movie?
Well, according to Munger, the devil's greatest weapon is his invisibility.
Okay.
And he believed that by exposing this idea to a mass audience,
Through the film.
it would somehow weaken the devil's power.
Interesting theory.
So yeah, if you really believed that,
You'd probably be a little on edge during filming.
looking over your shoulder for any sign of demonic interference.
So were there any actual incidents during filming?
Oh, yeah.
Like what?
Well, right from the start.
Several planes carrying cast and crew were struck by lightning.
On separate occasions.
Wait a minute.
What?
Isn't getting struck by lightning multiple times like super rare?
It is.
Like winning the lottery rare.
Yeah. It's definitely not something that happens every day.
So that's pretty freaky.
And it wasn't just lightning.
What else?
The film's producer, Mace Neufeld,
Yeah.
he and his wife narrowly escaped an IRA bombing at their hotel in London.
Oh my God. That's terrifying.
It was a close call.
So the bad luck wasn't just limited to the set.
It was following them around.
And tragically, it got even worse.
A chartered plane intended for the production crashed after being hit by birds.
And everyone on board was killed.
It was a devastating loss.
This is starting to sound less like a series of unfortunate events.
And more like a curse.
Were there any other incidents during the actual filming process?
You bet there were.
Like what?
Well, during one scene, they were filming with trained Rottweilers.
Those dogs are supposed to be super obedient.
Right. But for some reason, they just snapped,
And attacked a stuntman.
ignoring their handlers completely.
Whoa, that's crazy.
And then there's the case of the animal trainer.
What happened?
He was killed by tigers at a zoo the day after filming a scene there.
Oh no, that's awful.
It was a tragic accident.
But still pretty creepy given everything else that was going on.
Yeah, you can't help but wonder if there was some kind of connection.
So we've got lightning strikes, a bombing, a plane crash, and animal attacks.
It's a lot to process.
You could see why people would start to believe in a curse.
Especially those who were directly involved.
They were living through it.
It must have felt like something sinister was at play.
Did any of the actors experience anything strange?
Well, the most chilling incident, and the one that really solidified the idea of the Omen curse,
Yeah.
involved the special effects supervisor, John Richardson.
What happened?
Well, he was responsible for the film's infamous decapitation scene.
Oh yeah, that scene is brutal.
Super realistic.
It's one of those iconic horror movie moments that you never forget.
Exactly.
So what happened to Richardson?
Months after filming wrapped.
He was involved in a horrific car crash,
In the Netherlands.
and his girlfriend Liz Moore was decapitated.
It was a horrific accident.
A terrifying echo of the scene he worked on.
You can't make this stuff up.
That can't just be a coincidence.
It gets even weirder.
How?
The crash happened near a town sign.
That read Almond.
Just one letter off from the film's title.
No way.
And to top it off, Richardson claimed the kilometer marker at the crash site was 66.6.
Whoa.
That's some seriously creepy stuff.
It's like they tapped into something dark by depicting those violent acts on screen.
And brought it into the real world.
Did anyone else involved with the film have a similar experience?
Well, there's also the case of Harvey Stevens.
The kid who played Damien.
He disappeared from the public eye for years after the film.
Really?
And when a documentary crew finally tracked him down...
He refused to talk about the curse. That's suspicious.
It is, isn't it?
Like he knows something we don't.
Or maybe he just wants to leave the past in the past.
I guess we'll never know.
Unless he decides to break his silence.
So what do you think?
Was it all just a string of incredibly unfortunate coincidences?
Or was there something more sinister at play?
Something beyond our understanding.
I don't know about you.
But I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
Okay, so we've got one story about a farmer and a blood-red apple tree.
And another about a Hollywood film plagued by bizarre events.
It makes you wonder, are curses real or are we just...
Wired to find patterns and meaning, even in randomness?
I mean, it's like that old saying, if you're looking for trouble, you're sure to find it.
Right, like maybe the people involved in the Omen?
Especially after hearing all that talk about the devil.
They were subconsciously looking for signs of a curse.
making them more sensitive to any negative event.
Absolutely. It's called confirmation bias.
That's where we tend to favor information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs.
And dismiss anything that contradicts them.
So if someone already believed the omen was cursed,
They might interpret any bad thing that happened
even something as common as a car accident,
as proof of the curse.
it's like seeing the world through those rose-colored glasses.
But in this case, the lenses are tinted with dread and anticipation of the worst.
Right, and when you combine that with the power of suggestion,
Things can really spiral out of control.
if everyone on set is whispering about a curse,
And expecting disaster.
it creates this atmosphere of anxiety and fear.
Which, ironically, might actually increase the likelihood of accidents or mistakes happening.
So they could be creating their own curse through their belief in it.
A self-fulfilling prophecy.
But then again, there's also something to be said for the power of stories.
And the human fascination with the unknown.
I mean, throughout history, every culture has had its own tales of curses and spells and supernatural forces.
Right. These stories tap into our deepest fears.
The things we can't control or explain. Like when you were a kid and someone told you a house was haunted,
Yeah.
even if you didn't believe in ghosts, you'd probably still feel creeped out walking by it at night.
It's like our minds are incredibly powerful.
And the stories we tell ourselves, whether they're based on fact or fiction.
They can really shape our experiences.
So where does that leave us? Are curses real?
Or are they just stories we tell ourselves to make sense of a chaotic world?
I guess that's for each of us to decide.
But what we can say for sure is that these stories,
Whether they're based in reality or just products of our imagination.
they continue to fascinate us.
And maybe even haunt us a little bit.
They remind us that even with all our technology and scientific advancements,
There are still mysteries out there.
things we may never fully understand,
And maybe that's the most enduring curse of all.
the human need to find meaning and explanations.
Even when faced with the unknown.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the world of curses.
But if you enjoyed this episode,
I encourage you to do your own research,
the world is full of stories.
where the line between reality and the supernatural is blurred.
So keep an open mind.
But maybe keep a nightlight on, too.
Until next time, happy exploring.